All right. Thank you so much, Maestro Fisk. So, as a guitarist, as a guitarist and musician, you're very known for being able to see outside the box and think outside the box. So, what general advice you would give advanced and sort of motivated students and guitarists to think outside the guitar box?
Well, first thing I think it's wonderful to see that so many young people still want to go into this very difficult profession at a very difficult time in history. It's the one thing that seems to really be constant is that young people are still drawn to the classical guitar, and they love it. They really genuinely love it. And one of the things that makes me really sad, has made me sad, is to see these wonderful hopes and these dreams of young people sort of crash on the rocks of the reality of the present day world. And that's the reason that I started the festival in Boston 12 years ago, Boston Guitar Fest, which has grown and kept going, I'm happy to say. And the reason I made the insane decision to try to start something in Salzburg, which we're doing for the first time this year, Salzburg Guitar Fest. And I chose those names very carefully, actually, because I didn't want to just repeat something that's been done well many times. There's so many guitar festivals now, and they have wonderful artists come every year, and there's a certain rhythm that builds up. And I wanted to do something. I wanted to try to do something a little bit distinctive from what's already been done so well. Why should I repeat what's been done so many times so well? So, of course, as you know, my particular interest is what we call German grenzüberschreitendes Zeug. I like to do the cross-disciplinary stuff. And my approach has always been cross-disciplinary. I don't come from a musical family. There's no musician known to me except, I guess, my father had an uncle who was a Jewish dentist in New York City, Uncle Jesse Feinberg, who was reputed to have played the piano so beautifully that people would stop on the streets of New York to listen to him play. So there must be some musical talent somewhere in the family, but it's rather distant. And so, by some weird coincidence, at the age of 7, I was introduced to the guitar. And how did that happen? Well, I had only one brother. My brother had Down's syndrome. So my mother had thought that something we could do as a family would be to sing songs to the accompaniment of a guitar. Because what you do with a Down syndrome child, obviously their development is different from that of people who don't have Down syndrome. So in this way, my father came home one day with a very cheap banjo and a very cheap guitar. He got them both for $100. And they were two of the worst musical instruments ever built on planet Earth. And I started with the banjo. And that banjo had strings, steel strings and this high, so for a 7-year-old, impossible. After about a month, I said, this is not going to be it. My father had played a little bit of banjo in college, just a little, very little bit. And so that's why I had started with the banjo. But then, soon after that, I went to the guitar. And after about 2 or 3 months, I was still fooling around with this guitar and trying to teach myself from this method we had. We had 2 LPs and a big sort of booklet that would teach yourself guitar. And I was still trying to do this after 3 months. So my mother, I remember the day my mother, would you like lessons? I thought, wow, that's impossible. How could anybody have extra money for guitar lessons of all things? What a frivolous use of money. Who could spend money on that? So my parents were members of the Quaker Meeting Society of Friends in Philadelphia. And amongst the members of our meeting was the first double bass player of Ormsby's great Philadelphia orchestra. That first double bass player was Roger Scott, a very eminent figure in the double bass community. And Roger asked around the city of Philly and found that there was a man there who had taken a few of Segovia's summer courses at the Accademia Chigiana. And so by chance, I started classical guitar with that man, because Roger Scott said, the great double bass player, said to my parents, well, if he starts classical guitar, if he learns that, if he wants to do other kinds of guitar later, it'll be no problem, he'll be easily able to do it. That's, of course, totally wrong, totally false. There's no connection there, because if you do classical guitar, then you have a feeling for rock or folk or flamenco or jazz or anything else. It's really how your ear works. But of course, at that time in history, we're talking about the early 60s, the guitar and Andres Segovia were synonymous. So of course, the first record I would get was a record of Segovia. And I still remember that recording, which it started with De Murcia, Santiago de Murcia, some prelude and Allegro D minor. And it had the Cosmo Tedesco Sonata, it had the Rodrigo Fandango from the Tres Piezas Españolas. On the other side, it had the dance number 10 by Granados. I had some studies of Soar, and probably a couple of other pieces which I forgot. Anyway, this record absolutely fascinated me. I listened to it, and this seemed like the most magical world. And I wasn't really even that crazy about music. I liked music, but Segovia, boom, Segovia, just grabbed me. Well, I never practiced at all until I remember being outside running around, and my mother would call me to go to my guitar lesson. I hadn't picked up the guitar all week. I would go to my guitar lesson. That's how it was. Well, when I was about 10 or 11, my father had a sabbatical in Sweden, an exchange with a colleague, and we lived in Sweden for 10 months, during which time I was put into a Swedish elementary school. So I didn't speak any Swedish. They didn't speak much English. I was alone, Swedish TV, nothing. There was nothing to do. I had about 20 books in English. I read through those in about 2 or 3 months. They were all read. There wasn't anything to do. I had the guitar that I started to practice. And that's when I got kind of serious with the guitar. For the first time, I actually grew fingernails. I had never had fingernails before that. Then I came back from there, and that's when I got serious with the guitar. So my journey with the guitar has been a very personal one. And my statements, my musical statements through the guitar as my instrument are a reflection of my life. So I kind of know how I was able to turn my life experiences into music and still turn my life experiences into music. And this is what I think is so priceless about each young person who comes to me or who I meet. And what I really want to encourage people to do is exactly this, nowadays, it's not just that it's more interesting and more fun, but the smartest economic thing you can do is paint your own portrait through your art, through your music. Now, to do this, of course, you need technique, you need to know music history, you need to know theory, you need to know so many things. There are so many things that have to be studied and learned that are more or less objective. But what really counts is how you think about this stuff. So, if I'm teaching a student, we're working on Bach, as you know, very often I say, go to Johannes Passion, go to Matthäus Passion, go to this, Cantata 29, I make all these references. I say, now I know how I react to this, but I don't know how you react to this. How do you react to this? This is what interests me. And it interests me more and more the older I get, the more I love teaching. And the more I love the possibility of hopefully having a positive influence on young people who are going to form opinion and do great things themselves on the planet. It's such a critical time in the evolution of humanity. It's such a critical time, and we need these idealistic young people. And it breaks my heart to see, the young people see the corruption. They see when there's an incompetent teacher just sitting on a position that because the teacher's there you can't fire them. Okay, there's a human aspect. You can't just turn people out. I understand that, but the young people feel betrayed when they see an incompetent person in a high position. The young people feel betrayed when they see contests that are crooked. When they see contests where somebody's in the jury whose students are playing and they manipulate the jury, and those students do better. Students are upset, rightfully upset. So I made it an absolute rule in the 2 contests that I have started, the one here in Boston and the one in Salzburg. We will also have a contest. No teacher from either school is going to be on the jury. I am not on the jury. I pick a jury, but I don't know what my jury is going to say. A lot of times I disagree with my jury. Tough. We just had a video first round in Salzburg, and some of my really good students didn't pass. Now, I'm not going to change my rules and manipulate the rules so my students can pass. I picked my jury. My jury decided I have to abide by the jury. That's it. So I try, again, competition is not a very lovely thing. It's kind of a fact of life. It's like going to a casino and playing Russian roulette. You win some, you lose some. And if you don't win, it doesn't matter. Some of the greatest musicians never did competitions or were successful in competitions. And some of the people who've won the most competitions are not particularly interesting musicians. They simply have offended the fewest people on the juries, and they pass. I have sat in all the major juries, all of them. Munich twice, and in Spain many, and I've been invited to all the big juries. And these days, I really am not accepting. I even turned down a day in Munich, the biggest one. I was invited, and I said, I don't think 10 days of my life sitting in the jury, being one member of the jury, is half as productive as if I'm teaching and working with young people. Because in a competition, there's no chance for me to, I tried always in the competitions. I took notes when there were, errors in solfege or some wrong note. I tried to write down the wrong notes and tell people, or I tried to give advice. But I found there was never any forum. There was never any chance when I could really talk to the young people, really work with the young people, really be a help to the young people. And I decided I don't want to participate in this, even though I sponsored 2 competitions. I created 2 competitions. But I realized it's not a good use of my talents. I'm not a good judge. I get too involved. I get too passionate about somebody, and maybe I'm unfair to somebody else. I take myself out of this. I'm not good at this. It's another thing about making a career. Know what you're good at, and do what you love. This is really important. We all have something that we love. If you love it, somebody else is going to love it. It's like if you love your kids get used to feeling what love is. They can be loved by somebody in the world. And if you mistreat your kids, they get used to mistreatment, and they repeat, situations where they are mistreated. So the same thing with the music that people love. If you love a piece, if you love how you play it, this is fantastic. I'm always talking to the students and saying, yes, you must be critical. You have to be critical of yourself, but you also have to know what you do well. And don't practice on the guitar what you can practice lying in bed mentally. If you can practice it mentally, why should you practice it on the guitar? Be aware what you do well. Give yourself a break, and enjoy playing. If you don't like playing, if you don't like your playing, who's going to like your playing? You have to love what you do. You have to get to the point that you can do something you really believe in, you really love. And if you have something you really believe in and you really love, eventually you get enough people that think like you do. You don't have to get everybody. Coke doesn't sell 100% of soft drinks. They sell a big percentage. And you want to get to the bigger percentage as you can. And I think if you put out a sincere message and you put it out with a good heart, then eventually, the dreams can come true. That's what I hope.
Great. So I'm talking about careers. It seems like there's this belief, especially in the guitar world, I win competitions, I get a career. And in reality, it seems like there's like a big disconnection. So there's this, I refer to your term of the guitar ghetto.
Yeah.
What would be creative ways for young people to think about building a career, and maybe where do you see the competitions being a part of it, not being a part of it? How can a young person think of that?
I think in let's say piano or violin, I think if you win the Tchaikovsky competition, there's so much power and there's so much money that it pretty much starts you off on the first 3 to 5 years of your career. Now, what you do after that is that depends on you. So as far as the guitar goes, I always liked the famous inaugural address of John F. Kennedy. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. It's sort of like that with the guitar. If you find something in the guitar that needs doing, and you do it surpassingly well, that is creating a market share for you, to use a very crass way of talking about it. So, for example, this project that you've developed here is a wonderful, wonderful example of a way to enhance your career. Because I think these days, I almost think that the old style model of the conquering virtuoso, going from city to city, is not going to work anymore. Because I think the musical infrastructure is too decayed at this point. There's been too much. It's just like the ecology of the earth. The earth has been so beaten up by people, and people just taking things out of the earth, taken out. Well, we have the same thing in music. The traveling virtuoso has been great for the career of the traveling virtuoso. I don't know how great the traveling virtuoso has been for the development of music, for the integration of music into the daily life of people. So I think a lot of work has to go in now to creating infrastructure, creating a school, creating a festival, creating a virtual reality online. Anything that does that is going to be good, and anything that is capable of being turned into a global marketing strategy is going to be good, and that really means online stuff just like this is absolutely terrific. It brings like-minded people together. It brings good spirits together, and I think people also that have the advantage of like you really have at least 3 countries that you're completely at home. In your case, you have Germany, you have Russia, you have here. That's pretty fantastic, So building on, and that's something that's uniquely personal to you. And you speak all the languages perfectly. That's incredible. That's fantastic. So that gives you, a very unique kind of signature. And I'm sure everybody has a unique signature in some way, shape, or form. In my case, it was having a Down syndrome brother gave me this tremendous need to express myself, or I would go crazy. There was a lot of suffering that came with that. So that is like the grain of sand that you try to make a pearl out of that grain of sand. The oyster tries to make a pearl out of that grain of sand. From that suffering, I felt music so deeply, and I couldn't stop feeling it deeply. It's just natural. So from a disadvantage, I tried to make an advantage. And I think every person in his or her own way has something really unique to give. And it's very easy to lose faith in that, to think that it doesn't matter, to think that that can't come to fruition. But I think it really can come to fruition. And unfortunately, I'm a bit of a dinosaur. I don't really understand all the ways of the internet and all that from an earlier time. But I think the young people should use everything. For example, sometimes I have students who can still play rock guitar, or who still play jazz guitar, who still do other things, or who play other instruments, or anything that's unique to you in addition to the guitar. So that the guitar is the expression of a bigger person, of a bigger set of skills and interests and passions. I always thought the guitar would be ideally suited to be linked to medicine, for example. I mean, the guitar you should be taking. We should have guitar programs in all the hospitals. Go room to room and play for people, especially people who might be alone. I mean, I'd love to see the guitar used in the social justice movement. I contacted Noam Chomsky, the great resistance leader and linguist, etc. And I said, I don't understand how come all you great social revolutionaries are not using music at all? Why is art music shut out of the liberation movement? He said, well, that's interesting. You should ask, because when I was young, I remember in my parents' house that during the 1930s there was always communist ferment, or socialist left-wing ferment in America. He said, and I remember that the people would come over and first they'd debate about the Budapest Quartet concert, and then they'd get into the social issues. So this connection has been lost. So many ways where music could be relevant to people have been lost. And you go look at some of the films of the concerts of someone like Bruce Springsteen or the Rolling Stones, who really, they've got an act. Man, it's an amazing act. There's a lot of energy, and they're still doing it with authenticity. And they believe in it, and it's not too complex a message. It's got a beat you can follow. It's got text that everybody knows, and it has a tremendous marketing power behind it. Now, we're not going to get to that, but it's something that's really interesting about those people. There's a lot to be learned from them. But can you imagine Rolling Stones in any of our classical music conservatories? I mean, can you imagine what that would be like? Can you imagine Bruce Springsteen? I mean, we can imagine it, but God, what would the academics do? I mean, this is the problem this is our problem. This split between the intellectual elites and the people, and therefore we don't have any market share. We're 1% and 2%. It's a loyal group, but it's way too small a group, and I just don't think it has to be that small a group. So any young person that can figure a way out of that's not cheap, that would be an amazing thing to achieve. So if I were young today, I'd be trying to do something like that. I would be trying to get music. I would be trying to link this, Hohe Kunst, which it really is, this noble art that Schubert talks about in the Musik. It really is a noble art. It is the best thing that our Western civilization has produced, in my opinion. The greatest thing we have produced is this music. And it's about 10 Germans and a few Italians, and a few French and a few Russians and a few English and a few Spanish, and that's it. It's amazing what these few people. Look how few people they are. Look how much comfort they've given. Think of how much comfort the music of Bach has given to humanity over the years. And this is such a noble thing. This is a glorious thing. This is, we should be absolutely proud to be the representatives of this incredible legacy that we have. And we have just got to figure out a way to connect this legacy to the people of the world, because it's just the best thing that there is. And it's cheap, you know. It's cheap. Look how cheap our concert tickets are. Look how cheap our CDs are. You know, classical music has this reputation of being, you know, elitist or, you know, elitist, but in fact, it's not. And so these are all things that I think if young people can think, you know, if they can get outside of the anxiety of paying the rent long enough to have a bigger view, then they'll do great things. So I also think that, I mean, if I were running a music conservatory, I would have a course called Day Jobs for Musicians. Let's be honest. You know, how are you going to pay the rent when you get out? You're not going to walk into a job. There's no job to walk into. So I think we should all be looking for some kind of help. You know, second thing, to pay the rent for a while. Why not? It would be great. You know, develop other skills. Musicians are so competent for other things as well. I mean, there are many stories of musicians have gone really far when they go down the fields. If I were running a music conservatory, I would try to set up contacts for my students so that they could find, if they can't find, first of all, any musical work, for sure. I would be supporting, just like, you know, Yale has this wonderful thing, you started this great thing, I would be supporting that. And I would be supporting also anything else that a musician could do 10 hours a week or something and pay the rent and still do music. I mean, Charles Ives had to do it his whole life, right? He was selling insurance his whole life. And that enabled him to be completely pure and do only the music he wanted to do. Tough choice. I'm not saying that that's the best choice, but I would not rule it out. Think how many jazz musicians were like, you know, running the elevators in the hotels and something. I mean, just disgraceful, you know, that had to happen. But it's a fact of life. So as you know, I talk to all my students right from the day when I say, you know, figure out how you are going to create. Or if your name is .com, that's who you are. That's your business. You know? And then find as many, just like with a mutual fund, you want to have a lot of income streams. So you have one that's maybe very secure, maybe teaching. It's okay, you know, I won't starve to death. Okay, teaching. Then you have another thing, concerts, good. What kind of concerts? Well, I have some crossover projects with this, or I have a crossover with theater, or I have a crossover with an art museum, or I have a crossover with dance. You know, anything that gets us out of the ghetto, because the guitar is so flexible. It goes to everything. It relates to everything. It's infinite, and that's the advantage of our instrument. You can't pigeonhole. It does classical, it does jazz, it does rock, it does folk, it does everything. And there's a plucked string instrument in every culture as well. In China, and pipa, and in Japan, and koto, and you know, sitar in India, etc. All like an infinite number of plucked string, you know, colleagues to explore and find out new ways. Once you get your basic craft, it's wonderful to go to a good conservatory, and there are some wonderful teachers now around the world that do wonderful things. You know, get good basic craft. And once you have that, create your own universe, invent your own universe. Have faith in your own imagination and put pressure on yourself, not just to, you know, if we go to these guitar competitions, we have, you know, 50 guitars playing the same 2 or 3 sonatas again and again and again, and we get sick of them. My God, there's got to be a better way than that. You know, so create new avenues, create new continents and universes, and use your imagination, you know, and start to value your imagination. But with our instrument, we have to be very, you know, minucioso. We have to, you know, check all these little details. But we also have to, you know, open up and get a bigger picture as well.
So as a last question, let's talk about inspiration. So I know that you tell your students in terms of when learning a piece to get inspired by, you know, the similar epoch, era, similar. So how did this change for you personally, from deriving inspiration from being a student to being this world famous guitarist? So how do you, did it change the way that you get inspired and to learn new music, to choose new repertoire, and how is this maybe different than from your student years?
I think it's very similar, actually. For me, my whole life, I've played music that I loved. Every once in a while, I have to play a piece that I don't love so much, but you know, it's a contemporary piece, and I have to learn it, and I have to play it, and that's just the way it is. And I always try to do my best any piece that I play. As you mentioned, I always try to go into the roots of the piece, wherever the piece comes from. So it's, in the case of Bach, in my opinion, Bach, every piece of Bach has some kind of meditation on the story of Christ. So if it's, like the middle part of the Chacal, maybe it's Maria looking at Jesus, and maybe, the opening is some kind of a tragic, almost a Trauermarsch, And so with Bach, I think it's the Christ story. With Mozart, I think he only ever wrote opera. I think everything he wrote was opera. So these different composers, they each found their own way of expressing their life in music. So where there are letters, we try to study the letters. If there's an issue of style, like Mozart being, evolving a bit out of Haydn and out of his father, all that kind of stuff, and then occupying this position between Haydn and Beethoven, kind of thing. So I think studying the style is very good. If you know the language that the composer thought and spoke, it's a big advantage. And I always think of the composers as if they were my friends, as if I knew them. Some of them you can know easier than others. Like Beethoven, you don't have to meet Beethoven. You know Beethoven. He's so aufgeknüpft, as he would say, unbuttoned. He's so out there. Or Mahler, who's another one. You just bared his soul. We almost don't need to know Mahler because his music is so autobiographical. Then there are others who are more mysterious. Bach is much more mysterious. Where did this miracle? How did this miracle happen? And in that part of Germany, what could there be in Thüringen? What could there be there that would inspire these thoughts? How is that possible? Living there, I mean, you've been there. It's nothing special. How did he get in contact with this divinity in that place? It's miraculous. So whatever I do, I definitely try to understand the piece in terms of the zeitgeist. I definitely try to understand the piece in terms of course, the theory, the harmony, the relation of intervals to one another, the structure, of course, and really, it's a fairly consistent line. I don't see. Obviously, I've learned more. I know a lot more than I did 40 years ago when I was starting out. But I think it's the same aspiration, to have to. Segovia said it most beautifully of anybody. He said when you look at the score, you look at the dots and dashes. He said the score is like Lazarus, dead and in the tomb, and the performer says, "Steh auf und geh, arise and go forth." You have this. That's what you have to do with the piece of music. You must make it. You must create life. It must live, and that takes imagination, and that takes passion, and that takes love, and of course a lot of hard work. But I think the Segovia metaphor is really great. And I prefer that to the sort of the Neue Sachlichkeit or something. The idea that the piece is a definite thing, because I think that the beauty about musical notation is that it's so precise on the one hand and so open to interpretation on the other. When somebody writes a guitar, what is that? Well, you have to kind of feel it. Then even the most exacting contemporary composers, someone like Ferneyhough, who's just an incredible precision in the notation. It's unbelievable. But even that, I mean, there's for sure still room for a human being to get in there and do something interesting. So I think that's what I try to do.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you.